Hello, everybody, and welcome to, what's the episode number, Tettles?
65.
Episode 65 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Ratnos, joined as always by Tettles and Trell. This week we also have a special guest.
Hi, I'm Corey.
Hello.
The show number, man.
Dude, okay, here's the deal. Here's what happens every time we have to start the show. I have like 5 things I have to do because I'm very scuffed on my end, right? I have all these things I'm muting and unmuting, and like tabs I'm swapping between, things I'm full screening again. And then the thing that is not anywhere close to the front of my page anymore is the show notes, which have the episode number at the top. So that's exactly how that happened there. Anyways, welcome to our show, Corey.
Thank you.
You are, I guess, a healer main. So we're going to talk with you about healing. Would you like to tell us a little bit about some of the things you've done in World of Warcraft?
Yeah, so I didn't really play the past couple expansions. I mostly just came back for BFA. And then when I came back in BFA, I started off as Alliance. And then that's when I first started getting a little bit into keys and more into raiding. And then I realized that I really actually wanted to be able to do keys. So then I made the swap to Horde so that I could actually find a group to do that. And then once I got there, I, after a little while, joined Parse Culture or Poetry Club or whatever we're calling it now. And then since then, I've been mostly maining a Resto Druid. And then this last season, I decided to kind of troll and play Mistweaver instead because I got really bored of Resto Druid. And then I've raided on Resto Druid, and this last raid tier, I played Resto Shaman for N'Zoth.
You also competed in the most recent MDI, right? How did that go?
Yeah. So we didn't do any of the earlier cups. We were just like, oh, there's 1 cup left, and we're like, oh, let's just throw a team together. It was like with Dilemma, who I'd never met before, and then like Snap from our guild and stuff like that. And then we competed, and we got 4th place. We got kind of close to 3rd, but not quite. Goosey Bad definitely was a really good competitor. We also did that one case then with you Dradnos.
Account-wide essences.
And Twisted account-wide essences.
Right. Yeah.
We got our gold done. We got the account-wide essences, and that was also really fun.
We got swiftly 2-0'd.
Yeah.
You guys could have won that King's Rest.
We could have. Dude, we're up against Method NA at the time. We were at the last class of King's Rest like 5 minutes before them. We wiped 3 times to it.
They lost the game.
Yeah.
This one before. Was that King's Rest?
Yeah, we were kind of owning though. That was a good key. We had a good path.
You were owning, and then I kind of threw because then I taunted then bubbled instead of bubbled then taunted the Tick Buster, and then that killed our DK.
Well, sometimes it's like that.
So that's how it would be. I'm not a very good paladin.
So this week we're going to talk with you about the state of healing on the beta, which is also something that you've been playing a lot of recently. Yeah. Both the dungeons and the raid testing. And then we'll also, we should talk, I guess, a little bit about the Keystone Masters that just happened. Trell was competing in that. Tettles and I were casting in that. And Trell, how did the tournament go for you and your team?
Oh, it went pretty well. We ended up 3rd place. I think we played out of our minds most matches we played. We had very little mistakes, and then some maps we absolutely just snowballed out of control, like Junkyard. That's kind of a classic one. But we also had a really fast Junkyard right before that, so it's all good.
Yeah, you had the tweet that said, like, we had the slowest and fastest Junkyard ever.
Yeah, I think it's that. Well, the fastest Junkyard ever might actually be true. Like, it was really good. But it probably wasn't quite the slowest. We saw some crazy Junkyards in MDI. But, we almost got Divine's team. We almost got Fem's team. I think we all had a good time, all 5 of us. KSM's always a good event. It's only a 1 week of really intense practicing instead of 6. I think it's honestly just more fun for everybody involved. I do it again.
Yeah, it was a cool one to cast as well. Tettles, do you have any takeaways or anything to talk about at KSM, or would you like to advance to the next topic?
I mean, I thought the format was kind of interesting.
I guess we should talk about that.
I guess we saw a lot more specializations being brought. Most notably, I think we saw like more healer diversity than we normally would have. A little bit more tank diversity as well, but I felt like beyond that, like the DPS, I don't think that there was anything that was that surprising to me in terms of DPS.
I thought the Arms Warrior was pretty surprising at the end, how well they did.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, that was in that siege.
On his main.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that everybody got to play their main spec, basically. Like, anybody who had a main spec that they played a lot on live basically got to play that spec at some point during that tournament, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But even then, ideally, your best comp is, like,
Yeah, I mean,
Hunter, Demon Hunter, DK, and then you just rotate your 3 DPS through all 3 of them.
Well, I mean, ideally the thing you do is you have 3 people who can play Prot Warrior on your team, like Trell's team did. That was awesome.
True.
And I agree that like if you made this an MDI rule set, you probably would, the teams that would win would be the teams that could do that and did do that versus the teams that, you know, played their pet specs. But it was still cool to see for this tournament.
So, question for Trell, I guess: how did the tournament feel as a player in terms of like practicing? Because there were times where you would have to practice 2 completely separate comps for the same dungeon, and we saw things like, I don't remember, there was an Ataldazar that was the team's second comp. I think it was like Paint for Fem's second comp, and there was some shenanigans happening in that dungeon.
Like, even if you play the same exact comp in both those scenarios, it's different people playing the different characters, and so like something's going to go wrong if you didn't have ample time to practice. So yeah, those situations make it kind of weird. I think our Underrod had like 3 different comps depending on where we went in the bracket because we had to prioritize other maps because they were more important matches.
Okay.
So like if we ended up playing Underrod again that second day, it would have been really bad. Most likely. However, everything else I think was really fun. I just don't know about the rule sticking through the entire cup, if that makes sense. Like maybe only the first few matches, and then you could like, I don't know.
Or maybe game 3 you can play anything, and games 1 and 2 have that rule.
Yeah, maybe that would actually help.
Anyways, Corey, you have anything to say about Keystone Masters? Any thoughts on the whole thing?
I thought it was really fun to see everybody playing the different spec. I really liked seeing everybody that hadn't played a healer before trying to play a healer and the different classes. Of course, good job, Kel. But other than that, I thought it was really fun to watch in a really nice like community held event. But yeah, I don't think I would like to stand the MDI. The MDI is way too intense with the amount of practice you already have to do, and just like throwing that in the mix, I think is way too punishing and not fun for the players, and it's going to discourage more people than it's going to actually encourage to play. But I think for like a community held event like KSM, super fun.
I think I agree with that, yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to our main topics. So before we get to talking about all the healers, we've got some Shadowlands beta news of various kinds to get through. The first is item level related, specifically Mythic Plus item level related. So let me pull up the Wowhead article over here. I guess the main takeaway from this is that the gear from the end of Dungeon and M Plus is now lower item level than Heroic. Do you guys have any takes on this development before I get to mine?
I agree with yours. And okay, so basically for me, like whenever you look at it as a whole, so sure, the -3 on Heroic end of dungeon rewards is going to make you be lower item level as a purely Mythic Plus only player. Like basically this only affects Mythic Plus only players, right? So as a purely Mythic Plus only player, the -3 from Heroic is going to leave you worse off gear wise early on. But over the course of the whole entire patch, on average, you will be higher item level because whenever you put it in context of having the Great Vault as well, you're going to just as a whole be higher item level across the whole entire patch.
Corey, how about you? Do you have a opinion on this? I know you sometimes have alts that only do Mythic Plus.
Yeah, I actually don't hate it. Like I always think that raid gear should be higher than Mythic Plus gear. And I think that it's harder to just plug a Heroic once a week than it is to just be able to like spam like a 15 freehold to get whatever like crit haste boots you want and stuff like that. So even though I know I'm gonna hate it later when I have to gear up and all, right now I do like the idea that like you actually get rewarded for putting in that really annoying time like plugging a Heroic raid or something like that, rather than just going and getting a 15 and getting your best gear that way.
Yeah, from my perspective, like 3 item levels, I don't know. I tried to care about 3 item levels, but I mean, it's annoying that it's going to affect what you can and can't trade. I hate that more than like 3 item levels of power level. I think if they just changed the loot trading rules so that they were like, I don't know, either get rid of them or like make it so that if it's within a 10 item level window of something you already have, you can trade it. But like, I don't know. I don't think 3 item levels worse is a big deal for players that are doing, you know, that like if you're not doing the highest tier rewards anyways, then it doesn't matter, right? That's not the kind of player you are, right?
It is going to be worse for players who want to pick up an alt later on into a patch, though, right?
Is it? I mean, how many of those characters are defined by a 3 item level difference in the end of dungeon gear they get, right? And to be fair, it's not a 3 item level difference from the current patch. It's an 8 item level difference from the current patch, because in the current patch, you get 5 higher than Heroic. from a 15.
So relatively, it is 8 compared to what we are currently playing.
A character in full end of dungeon gear. But the thing is that like there are no characters that are in full end of dungeon gear that are doing super min-max content, right? Like you're either somebody who's been getting those end of dungeon or the weekly vault rewards, or you've got raid gear, right? Like end of dungeon gear is not a part of a permanent gear set for any kind of character that cares about something like a couple item levels.
This only affects people who don't raid and primarily do like almost solely do Mythic Plus as their only source of content.
So if M Plus is the only thing you do though, in BFA it takes way longer to get a good set of gear because you only get one item.
Yes.
The weekly vault change is like hugely buff for it takes about half of the weeks off the calendar for how long it takes. I made a spreadsheet. I did all the math and everything for the Great Vault, and it takes
some good math right now.
Yeah, if you're trying to get 14 item slots, which to be fair, you need more item slots in Shadowlands than you do in BFA. You don't need 14 because you've got one legendary slot, but you still need like 13.
Shit.
Yeah. So that would take you with the BFA model, that would have taken you 31 weeks to get an item in every slot. With the Shadowlands model, picking from 3 rewards every week, it's 17 weeks. That's like half as many.
But what if you remove 3 slots from that?
What if you remove 3 slots? Right. So yeah, if you bring it down to 11, then it's still more, but it's only slightly more. But you have to consider that Azurite gearing for M Plus only characters was also a challenge, right? Like getting good Azurite. Yeah. Sometimes it was literally impossible, and other times you were rolling your residuum on that character for many weeks, right? So like, it's not like Azurite was just given freely to M Plusers. That's
true. Trell, somebody who didn't raid at some points and did raid at some points during this expansion. I know you're planning on raiding in Nathria. You have any opinions on this one? Feel strongly one way or the other?
Yeah, I think like a year and a half ago I would have been pretty upset. But as of this point in my Mythic Plus career, I think I've given up on the hope that Blizzard would provide Mythic Plus only players with equal levels of content or gear. I think they just don't see it the same level at all. So
that's
you Mythic Plus at the cutting edge, you gotta raid.
That was basically JB's tweet that said, hang on, let me find it. Lots of people upset at this. Yeah, but the real travesty is that Blizzard let M Plusers think they were people for 2 whole expansions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
I mean, part of it's the fact that they removed Titanforging, right?
Yeah, definitely part of it. It definitely hurts those specific players. I don't know, like there's no corruption or Titanforging anymore. I think it's worse now than ever for Mythic Plus only players, at least for this first season of Shadowlands.
Yeah,
I don't know what their plans are after, but
I mean that's why I think that they honestly should just like bring back raid specific tier sets, because I basically reiterated on the fact that they don't care if you want to be a Mythic Plus only player, and I think that at least tier sets would make loot more interesting currently. But that's a completely different topic that we may get into at some point.
Yeah. All right, let's advance to our next topic here, which is another loot-related thing: the removal of bonus rolls. Now, this is something that I'm a fan of because I hated not having my bonus. You ever kill a boss and the thing doesn't pop up and you're just like, crap.
I too am stupid, Rat. That's all. Yes.
You just like should have gone there that week and you didn't get your super bonus rolls. I don't know. Bonus rolls are never an elegant system. I think that it's glad. I think it's good they're going away. I liked that they let you target specific items. Like if you needed a raw den weapon or whatever, or like a trinket from a certain boss, you could bonus roll it weekly and like dramatically increase your chances of getting that item relative to a random raid item. Mm-hmm. So I liked that, but I think the bonus rolls in general were stupid. So. Good riddance.
Corey, you got anything about
bonus rolls? I'm totally fine with the removal of bonus rolls for basically the same reasons, yeah. I hated buying them.
Part of it, too, is that you can really only bonus roll raid content. Like, I felt like bonus rolling Mythic Plus was always just so fucking bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was never correct. It like, sometimes it felt like it was correct, but it was never... You're never supposed to do that. You're supposed to just run the dungeon more times, right? Because, like, any item you could bonus roll, you could just get.
Their reasoning, though, is interesting. And so the reasoning is because of the Great Vault, right? Which puts more of an emphasis on the Great Vault as a whole. But ultimately, I feel like it gives you less agency over what loot you're getting.
Right, and this seems a little incorrect what they say here. The Great Vault captures the value they used to provide to raiders. Like, it doesn't provide that value of targeting unless they add that functionality to the Great Vault, which Could you imagine if they did that, where you could just like you could set or you could put some bosses into each square of the Great Vault and be like, this Great Vault's gonna have an item from this boss and this one's gonna have an item from this boss. That would own.
That would
be
cool.
really cool. Yeah.
You do the same for dungeons and raids and PvP or stuff. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, even bonus rolls weren't like great levels of targeting, but they were slightly more than what I think we're going to end up seeing from the Great Vault, especially once you start full clearing raid. Because right now, as it currently stands, I think it's believed that you're not going to be able to get loot from like bosses that you haven't killed yet, at least from what's currently known. But like, so I guess there is a way that you can kind of target it.
Just don't kill the boss that has bad loot for you. You're just like, I gotta sit for this boss, man. This is gonna scuff my Great Vault. You guys go without me.
I mean, you know what I'm saying though, right? It's like, so I guess there is like some slight agency that you get from the Great Vault by virtue of being able to select. But then again, you also have to pick against Mythic Plus rewards or PvP rewards, whereas bonus rolls previously were just kind of only used in raid.
Yeah, I don't know. I just can't bring myself to, like, I liked some of the things the system did, but I've had so much negative experience because of bonus rolls. I'm happy to get rid of them.
I mean, bonus rolls suck. I don't think that anybody would claim that they're good.
Alrighty. Let's advance to our tip of the week segment.
Oh, wait. Hold on.
Okay.
There's something else. Okay. How do you feel about bonus rolls with the context of personal loot still being in the game and still being the primary source of gaining loot? I forgot about that.
I don't know.
Obviously, this is substantially better if Master Looter's in the game, right? Like, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make.
I don't think Master Looter is ever going to come back, man. I think that
Why not? Why do they hate it?
Because people have, like, if you get into a raid group that has Master Looter and, you never get to see any items, you never get to touch any items, you're going to hate it, right? Players hate that. Now, do I think that Master Looter would be better than, like, loot-restricted personal loot? Yeah. But it's not going to happen, man, so I don't know.
All right, fair.
I don't want to keep complaining about it because I think that there is a change that would be close, like just personal loot but tradable. And then we have literally the same, tradable? Like you have the same upsides and none of the downsides of Master Looter, right? Like you get to touch the item, you get to not trade it if you don't want to, but just make it so you can trade everything and then bang, solved.
Fair.
Well, Blizzard's perspective on it is that personal loot should make it so that you don't have to trade your BIS item that you get for the first time to.
Yeah, but you already can do that.
Slightly more.
You already can do that. Like, you get a 210. A 210 item can be an upgrade over a 226 if it's better statted, right? Or 213 can.
Right.
And similarly, the 226 can be a downgrade, and so you can just get these downgrades all the time that you can't trade. And so that, I don't know. I think that given that you already can be, like, if you're in a guild where people would obligate you to trade loot or whatever, they already can do that, and it can already be tradable and an upgrade for you. And you also can already get items that you can't trade that aren't upgrades for you. So just remove the restriction and, stop having it get in the way of trades people want to make.
Well, I was going to say their philosophy, I think, is based on the fact that they think they can tune everything to be relatively balanced. Like when you loot a higher item level, it's going to be an upgrade, but that's like so unrealistic. And I don't think it's ever been the case. So it's going to be a problem either way.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is for healers. Good, Corey?
I was going to say, do you think that them adding the DR to secondaries would actually start making that more true? Like the increase in eye level? I'm not very good at math, but in my mind, it makes sense.
I know for Balanced Druid specifically, Intellect is significantly better currently than all of our secondaries, especially once you start getting higher on the secondaries because of the DR, like you stated. I don't know how that's going to scale into the rest of the expansion though. I think it's probably on like a class by class basis. How would that work for healers though?
I mean, healers always usually, it really depends on the healer, but most healers usually value main stat pretty highly. So I would think that eye level would just continue to keep being an upgrade. Most healers are not super tunnel visioned into one stat the way a lot of DPS players are. So I think it's always usually going to be an eye level thing. But again, it's healer specific. I don't know if that'll be the case for something like a Holy Paladin, but it'd very likely be the case always for a Resto Druid or maybe even a Mistweaver, depending on the play style, and also for Resto Shaman,
Yeah, so for those who don't know the new stat scaling in Shadowlands, I think we talked about it maybe when it was first announced, but we haven't talked about it in recent weeks, is there's diminishing returns for secondary stats. So as you start getting above certain rating thresholds, it stops being effective, it stops being as effective. The rules are above 25%, you start incurring this penalty, and it's 10% penalty from up to 35%, and then an extra 10% all the way up to like the next couple brackets as well. And then once you get to 106%, you can't get any more as well. And that would take an absurd amount of stat now because there's a 40% penalty for the last half of that. So you can see on the graph here, at most levels of rating, it's fairly close to the same amount that you'd have in terms of percent as you do in BFA. Like you're looking at, maybe a 5% shaving until you start getting to like last patch of an expansion levels. But it may be enough of a stabilizer to make it so you want item level over stat. I doubt it though. I think most classes that have a good stat, it's better by more than this gap is until you start getting to like this area over here. All right. Cool though. Good point, Tettles.
You always have trinkets though, which are kind of a wild card. I mean, trinkets and like at least at BFA, they were basically just item level stat sticks. You just kind of pick the highest item level. But like historically, there have been some shit that you would even incur like a 30. Font of Power is an example.
Draft of Souls,
Convergence of Fate.
Fates. There have been all kinds of trinkets that have been good for multiple tiers. Font, I guess, was one. Mm-hmm. Other than that, there haven't been two. I guess the Urchin for Brewmasters.
Urchin, Coral, yeah.
Yeah.
Both pretty.
Coral. So there were Eternal Palace trinkets that survived Nihilotha, but none of them were like that sick except for Font for Mages, where like you couldn't live without them. All right, tip of the week time. My tip of the week is pre-patch is coming soon. Level your DK or DH now, or at least create it now. Maybe get out of that starting area. I don't know exactly what's going to happen to scaling of your levels, but I do know that in Shadowlands, those characters are going to start at like level 1, I think, or level 10 or something. So you're going to want to make them now so that you can then be level 100 when you get scaled down. And probably, my guess is you'll be able to save like maybe half of the leveling time or something if you make a DH now, maybe a third of it if you make a DK now. I don't know for sure, but no harm in trying if that's a character you want to level up. Trell, what is your tip of the week?
So mine has to do with Shadowlands because I can't think of anything for BFA. BFA is so dead. There is a new thing in Shadowlands called heavy armor kits. They're really annoying. You have to apply them every 2 hours if you want to be at your proper HP levels because they give you a bunch of stamina. So there's a weak aura floating around that you can import. I put some arrows pointing to it in that UI there. You just click those boxes anytime they pop up and they apply to your gear for you. So you don't have to like click 3 places every piece of gear that you need to put it on. Yeah,
we have a weak aura here, and we'll post it in chat and in the description as stuff as well.
Yeah, and like for audio only, it's Heavily Desolated Armor Kit's the name of the weak aura on Wago.
For audio only, it's wago.io/5pm uppercase A, SV uppercase J, either an L or an uppercase I don't know, and an R. So try both of those, and you'll be able to get it there.
You just read out the URL. What is wrong with you?
Dude, have you ever had somebody read out? Have you ever been in like elementary school and the library teacher gives you a URL or whatever and just reads out the 30 characters or whatever? Yeah.
I work in IT. Sometimes I'll talk to clients and I'll be like, "What webpage are you on?" They start reading the entire URL. I'm like, "No, stop."
You gotta stop that. You can't read the URL to me, man.
All right. Up next is Tettles' clip of the week, which comes from TTV Trelsky. All right.
Oh no!
What have we got going on here, Tettles?
It's a bounce house, man. It's Head Machinist Sparkflux, except for the cogs now knock you up. Is basically that boss now? And Trell in fact did not have a good time.
Oof.
As soon as he dies, he goes, "Okay, we're leaving this dungeon."
So rough. Why can't you just hide behind the pillar thing to your left?
Boss resets, but you can kind of get them there. You used to be able to drop them like behind the pillar, and most of those dark energy things that shoot out would be blocked by the pillar, but I don't think you can do that anymore.
They fixed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, I hate that fight because, like, okay, one, it's so contingent on your tank dropping those puddles in not terrible spots. And then secondly, it's like, if you get in, like, slightly the wrong place, then the Garrote positions the boss right behind you to just insta-reset the boss, and you're just like, I'm so stupid. So it's not a great fight. I don't like it very much as a caster, but maybe other people do.
They did make that room a little bit bigger where you can take it out to like the alcoves on the side without resetting it, but you can't take it to where the trash is and reset it anymore. So I'm not sure if you're talking about there, but yeah, there's not a crazy amount of room in that.
So wait,
room anymore.
Did they actually make that room bigger? Because basically, like if you got outside the circle, the boss insta reset.
Yeah, like there's the circle and there's like the trash right here and back here, but on the sides he won't reset anymore if you drag him over there. But he used to, which was really annoying.
Substantially better for not getting garroted and accidentally just insta resetting the boss, though, I will admit.
Yeah.
Man, Blizzard makes the weirdest changes, I swear.
They do.
Well, I mean, they're just kind of, they do a zone change for where stuff resets, and then if they need to, they change it again, right? So I don't know. There's a lot that they would probably let through for a lot of the bosses. It's just if they think it's bad in either direction. Okay, let's move on to our main topic. Our main topic is healing in Shadowlands, specifically. This is something that, Corey, you've actually made a YouTube video talking about choosing a healer to main in Shadowlands. And correct me if I'm wrong, the things you're looking at are like good in Raid, good in M+, and can play the same stuff in both?
Yeah, it was not like choosing like a best main, but it was like if you're someone who only likes maintaining one character, and you wanted to be able to play something that's decent in that and PvP and pick a covenant that's good for all three. That was the main focus of it. It wasn't saying just trying to say like, oh, this is the best healer.
Right.
But the one that came out on top was also probably the best healer. But yeah, it was trying to look at people who just like to play like one class and don't want to have to make a bunch of ults and do that kind of stuff. So that was the focus of that video, yeah.
What was your, I guess not to spoil it, people should go watch that video, we'll link it and stuff, but to spoil the video, what was the answer?
So the answer was Disc Priest.
Okay.
So Disc Priest right now they can play Kyrian is best in Mythic Plus and Venthyr is not too bad. Venthyr is best in Raid and Kyrian's not too bad. And then Venthyr is really strong for them in PvP right now, from what Seth Curry had to say. So
So take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt. But
Walker Monk main is giving you Disc Priest advice, yes.
Well, he spent a lot of time on the beta, like testing PvP and stuff like that. So I talked to him for like an hour about like where all the healers are, what covenants they're using and stuff like that, because I'm not that big on PvP, but I understand that you want to be able to get that done every week. But yeah, so Disc Priest was not only the best at everything, but they also had one of the better covenants for everything. And then the one that came in second was actually Mistweaver. Mistweaver's not good at anything. It's also not bad at anything, but it can play Venthyr in all three and just do well. And all the other ones were below that. Though I don't think like Mistweaver is the second strongest healer this tier. I do think that for like convenience sake, it is a good choice if you just want to be able to play one healer without having to like feel disadvantaged going into different parts of content all the time, which is a really annoying part of Shadowlands, is that you're so limited.
Yeah, so the other healers, you've got like a covenant that's bad for something and good for other things?
Yeah, so Resto Druid, is like, it's like, oh, you can play Fae or Venthyr for like Raid or Mythic Plus, which is good if you just do those. But if you want to play PvP, then you have to go Necrolord. And then I think Shaman's also in a fine spot too, where like Necrolord is really good for Raid and really good for PvP. And it's okay for Mythic Plus, but you want to go Venthyr for those. But Venthyr can also be good for all three, though it's less than good for all three. And then Holy Priest, I think, was Kyrian for Raid and Mythic Plus, and then Venthyr for Raid, and there wasn't like a lot of wiggle room there. I mean, Venthyr for PvP, sorry, so there wasn't a lot of wiggle room there. And then the last one was Holy Paladin, which was Kyrian for Raid and Mythic Plus, and then they want to go Venthyr for PvP, or it might have been, it was Venthyr and Nightbig, because Venthyr apparently is doing a ton of damage right now in PvP, from what people are saying. And that's kind of what's carrying them in PvP right now. So
Divine Toll is so stupid in PvE, though.
It's so strong. When I was playing Holy Paladin last night, which I'm not very good at, I was actually really surprised to see how much throughput Holy Paladin was doing, because it would just be like 3 Grievous stacks deep, and if I popped Divine Toll in Wings, it just topped the whole group, and that felt so nice in a Grievous Tyrannical setting. So I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Let's talk a little bit more about Grievous, actually, because Grievous is one of the affixes that's changed a lot in Shadowlands from the BFA version. So the BFA version is % health based, and the Shadowlands version is flat number that scales with key level. How's that been to play? How's that been to play on different healer specs or just in general?
So So in case you didn't know it, you've been watching this week, they did change it from the last iteration that people were testing on Grievous. So Atonement no longer removes it, but now the application of HOTS do remove it again. So things like the application of like Reju, which weren't before, are removing it again. Things like Renewing Mist.
So it's like one stack goes away when you apply a direct heal to it now, or a hot on the first application. Okay.
Yeah, on the first application. Like so someone is 4 Grievous stacks deep. You can make a choice to either cast Rejuve on them 3 times and get rid of all the stacks to 1. But that's not really going to provide you a lot of healing. You're just refreshing the hot, or just keep spamming regrowth. It's probably better to keep spamming regrowth, but it's still like a useful tool to have, especially if you're like having to move a lot. Whereas a Disc Priest, the only way they can remove it now is if they cast Shadow Mend or Powered Shield. And obviously they can't spam Powered Shield because of Weakened Soul unless they're in Rapture. So it's a bit harder for them to remove, and they just have to keep casting Shadow Mend. And most of their active healing from Atonements isn't removing it. And so I think they're in a really bad spot with Grievous again. I felt like this change was supposed to help out Disc Priest, and once again it's hurting them.
Did they actually? We were talking about this a little bit pre-show. Like, they were probably a little bit too strong with how the Atonement stuff was working, right?
Oh, but
now they actually just have an inability to be able to remove Grievous stacks the exact same as it was previously.
Yeah, I mean, like they can remove it. It's just like once you like okay, so Disc Priests are the best at preventing you from getting into Grievous, in my opinion. Like, they can keep you out of it, but as soon as you go into it, it gets so hard to climb out. Whereas like something like a Resto Shaman, I think is like the easiest at letting you fall into Grievous, but it's actually insanely good for just keeping, like, I'll just keep you at 1 stack at 50% for like 5 minutes and knock here, because I'll just keep on chain healing, and it'll feel so much better than anything else. And I think Resto Druids like fall somewhere in between, where they can kind of keep you out of it for a little bit, but once you're in it, they do a pretty decent job of triaging and keeping everyone alive. Not as long as I think a Resto Shaman can right now.
If they have Fae, they can just get you. They can just get you out insta though, right?
For the most part, Fae isn't quite as strong as it was, but for the most part, yeah, if they pop it pretty early, I think they can get you out. But if they wait until pretty late, it's kind of hard still. That might change a little bit, like with scaling, and it depends again like on how lucky you get with your cast and how many stacks you're removing, because there's a lot of RNG involved in Resto Druid Night Fae right now. So it's like, am I going to cast 3 Solar Wraths, or going to cast 2 Wild Growths, 1 Swiftman? Am I going to cast 5? Who knows?
Am I about to thrash and rake these mobs on accident?
Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah, that RNG would piss me off.
That RNG is
I was like trying to save my group, and it just did all damage. Globals and stuff.
Oh, imagine as a DPS, whenever you cast full fucking healing abilities because your party's all sub 50% health, and you're just like, oh, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you.
Support titles.
Thank God.
Yeah, I think the RNG on that is gonna be like also really crazy in raid, because like you have like a small chance in your convoke window to like cast like a flourish or something, which is kind of what's helping that go so well in raid. But it's gonna be so inconsistent how much healing that's gonna do. It could be a huge burst or just a tiny bit. But I find that kind of stuff interesting. Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to raid progression if we play a Resto Druid, and whether or not we can heal through something is based on it. Yeah.
Are they actually playing? Okay, so I know you mentioned Venthyr. Is Resto Druid actually playing Venthyr at some points? I feel like that's so.
I don't think we will until we scale a bit more. People were using it in testing when we were having like the 100% crit bug, but I definitely think Night Fae is going to be the better choice for raid and Mythic Plus, just because operating on a 3-minute CD isn't very good, and also operating with anything that has some kind of like downfall the way that Venthyr does if you stop casting, especially when you're a healer and you're usually forced to do all the mechanics and stuff like that. It's just not a very good playstyle. But like later on, I think it's gonna scale well. It's just like ERT. So once we start getting enough stats, I think it'll do fine. But right now, I think it's definitely Night Fae.
Now, early in the expansion, healing always feels very different from the end of an expansion, right? It's like somebody's health bar is at 10%, and that's like it's going to be about a minute-long commitment to bring them back up to full, right? Whereas in 8.3, you just one global them, and they're
one holy
fine.
shock.
Yeah. One
holy shock, and they're topped. Feels good. Yeah, it's very different. It's very weird to get used to inside of raid and stuff like that, because you normally in like live raid I get really excited when people dip and like, oh, this is gonna be fun to top them, and then whenever we're doing testing, I start stressing out immediately because I chain heal and their health like goes up like 3%, and then it's very scary after that.
Do you generally do you prefer healer power being lower or higher, like in-game levels or like early expansion stuff?
I definitely like feeling like I have some control over whether people get to live or not, but I definitely do not like like as far as raid healing goes. Okay, so as far as raid healing goes, I definitely do not like the power level we're at right now because it's really boring to to heal. Obviously, like anytime you get towards the end of end of a tier after prog, it's boring to heal no matter what. But I think it's especially boring now because even when we get down to like 2 healers or something, I'm still just getting sniped by the Holy Paladin. However, in Mythic Plus, I really like us being overpowered because that lets you as a healer have a lot more leeway in getting to go and do like damage and other cool stuff, and like doing big pulls is fun. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about it that way. But definitely raid not as fun. Mythic Plus very fun. Being able to just like top someone with a couple vivifies or regrowths.
And is mana going to actually be an issue in Nathria?
I think it is. Yeah, based off everything I've seen. I remember when we were doing PTR testing, all the healers. I can't remember. It was like the boss had spawned like the ads or something like that, but like it was like a minute and a half in every time. All our healers were before we got to the damage phase, and we would just fall over every single time. It's gonna be interesting. It's hard to get used to the mana problems again that come at the beginning of any expansion compared to the end of the expansion. And I think it's just about getting back in the mindset of mana conservation. But I don't think any of the classes are necessarily at more of a disadvantage than others. I feel like they made Resto Shaman a bit more mana intense, and they took away some of the mana intensity from Mistweaver, so it's not as bad. And I think they mostly left Holy Paladin the same, and they usually don't have that many mana problems. Really? Yeah. Oh. I mean, they must rely on their holy power now, so I don't think they're going to really have that many problems. But again, I haven't raid tested with them, so I don't actually know that. I know when I was testing keys, I don't think I ever drank compared to the other healers on Grievous this week. I was definitely drinking all the time. So yeah, but they're also not very strong in raid right now, so maybe that's okay.
Have you heard of my friend Devotion Aura?
Yeah, have you heard that a Ret Paladin or a Prop Paladin can bring it for you now? Have you heard that they nerfed AM? Yeah.
How bad is AM nerfed?
25%.
Ooh. Okay.
Hey, we played double Paladin last night. I was playing with Corey, and I was on Prop Paladin, she was on Holy Paladin. I got to use Retribution Aura and get wings whenever my friends died.
Yeah, I let them die pretty often.
Devo Aura is so strong. But yeah, if it's been nerfed as heavily, or you just bring it with a Prop Palliate, I guess that makes more sense even.
Yeah, I think the Devo Aura is actually pretty interesting because before it used to be such like a low range for you to get that full value with the Holy Paladin, whereas now it's before it was 10 yards and they'd be split among all the people within 10 yards. And so like if somebody was out at range, they weren't getting the benefit of the Devo Aura, obviously, unless you press AM. But now it's 3% all the time at 40 yards. So it's definitely like a passive buff compared to before. As before, it would be like 1% on everyone. Now it's 3% on everyone all the time, and you only have to bring one paladin to achieve that. Instead of before, like we were stacking holy paladins to do that. So it's a little bit of a buff the same way. I do like the change because it gives you a little bit more leeway on always having to have that holy paladin slot in. Because I think it stayed that way all throughout BFA. That even when they weren't like, I don't remember how they were in Uldir that well. I don't remember them being like
they were bad in Uldir, but AM was stupid, so they actually like, they did I don't know, let's say 10% worse healing, but they brought AM, so you brought them anyways.
Yeah. Kind of looking like that they might be in that position again.
Yes. Yeah. I think I've seen this one before.
Yeah. But I think they'll still mostly have a spot just because DR is everything, and I don't think Prop Paladin or Ret Paladin is necessarily looking good enough to justify giving up AM on that slot.
I don't know, Prop Paladin's kind of doing big damage.
Yeah, well, Prop Pally is doing literally, like, if Prop Paladin stays the 5th best DPS, then yes, I'm sure that you will see that.
Yeah. I guess if you use that like that back frontal shield and you pretend that's your AM, you could use that to
dude.
The Holy Paladin.
We use that. We use that on
Cabal,
what was that boss?
The only thing I've ever seen.
No,
wait, Zakul.
Zakul, yeah.
When I was on my Resto Druid, we didn't have a CD.
I played Prop Paladin on that fight to play shield thing on. I think it was on farm.
I can't remember the name of that ability. I swear.
It's like Aegis of Light.
Aegis of Light.
Yeah.
Aegis of Light. Yeah, thank you.
We used it on Cabal whenever the explosions were happening. That's hilarious. I guys used it on Zakul.
That owned. Okay, speaking of tanks, last week we were talking a little bit about the state of tanks in beta. That was our main topic last week, and the kind of general storyline of them has been that they've been getting nerfed over and over in terms of how much they're able to keep themselves alive. From the healer side of that equation, how much do you like it? Like, how much power would you give tanks in staying alive and determining whether or not they live? Like, how much do you want to be responsible for whether your tank lives versus the tank having some agency over it?
I would like to be about 10% responsible if it was ideal. Like, that's kind of like live levels right now is 10% responsible.
So
Yes,
just an
thank you.
external, basically.
Yeah, just an external. If
Like
you're
healing here and there.
Yeah. I would definitely prefer, I think it's way more fun. Like, if you are a healer who wants to do a lot of healing, and I get that sometimes healers want to feel like they have a healer identity and not just be like someone who DPSs and does healing sometimes. Like, I think it's way more fun to focus more on like group healing than sit there and just like turret, single target, kind of like greater heal, single target, like someone to full all the time. Like, that kind of playstyle just isn't very fun. And most of all, I think it's very unfun for the tanks to be so reliant on the healer, because if you the healer get like your DPS makes a mistake or something like that, and you have to go and like start healing them, I don't think that your tank should be directly like punished and die for that all the time, because that's kind of how it feels right now, is that you cannot just stop sitting there and turreting into your tank, and it's just
100%.
it's just not fun, and it's super punishing, and I do not like it, but it is a nice change of pace from like live right now, because like live right now, like we're so stacked that you can almost get away with a healer that doesn't do that much healing. It just focuses on damage, and I know that's been like a big complaint for some people, that they just don't feel like a healer. But I don't think that making tanks weaker is the solution. I think they've made a lot of these dungeons already really group healing intense. Like, there's so many more bosses I feel that are way more group healing intense than there were in BFA. And especially with Prideful right now, like that on a decently high key is going to always be a pretty like high damage check, and how well you can min max how many DPS CDs you need to use without also making it a tank thing. And also that thing like especially on like bears and prot warriors, I cannot keep them alive through a Prideful right now. It's
That thing actually
so
is pretty
crazy.
hard.
Yeah, like DK and DH, I'm like, it's okay, but those other two, I'm so stressed out with Bursting and Grievous on those. So yeah.
Yeah, any
but
tank that
it's
doesn't
not
have
fun.
100% uptime on their mitigation, I think, is really scary to heal on those.
Yeah, it is. When you're trying to heal everyone else, and people are inevitably getting hit by those bolts.
Let's talk a little bit about bursting, because that's another affix like Grievous that's getting a bit of a change going into Shadowlands. So the summary of what's changing is it's magic dispellable now, which is really good for the Priestos. Not particularly. I mean, it's kind of good for everybody else, right? Like, everybody else can get one dispel on one target, but other than that, I don't know. How have you been feeling with new bursting?
So I think it's like a bit too much damage right now, but that will change once we get more gear. Like, percent health wise, it's doing like more now on beta than it is for like a +8 on beta than it is on live right now, as far as like our percent health goes. So as we get more gear, that will be as high like a percent of our health. Yeah. So I do like the fact that it's dispellable. I do think that there's like a decent amount of skill needed for you to time all the mobs dying and for you to get a mass dispel and cast it and stuff like that. And I do like that you can kind of make a choice, like, okay, I'm going to bark this person, or I'm going to cocoon this person, I'm going to dispel this person, I'm going to pop this like defensive on myself and stuff like that, and having to time that correctly, it just makes it like, I think, even more important that everything is dying evenly so that you can snipe that dispel.
Yeah, I mean, well, you have Revival, Mass Dispel. I mean, Pally still has Bubble plus their own personal Dispel, and then you have like Resto Druid and Resto Shaman left, which, did they have problems healing bursting previously?
No. I think the main people, well, Holy Paladins still might have some trouble doing it, because like they don't have like a target to hit. I think a lot of this is a bit off topic, but I think a lot of like the problems that we've seen where like priests and paladins like have trouble like hitting things, like the two examples I'd use are like Devos, the last boss of Spires, and the last boss of Plaguefall. So like last boss of Spires, there's like a phase where she's up in the air and you can't hit anything. So like, and that's kind of like Avatar, where you'd have to keep something alive so that your Disc Priest could keep healing. And so they address that by making the damage that goes out a dispellable debuff, so that they can just mass dispel and get rid of the damage. However, they didn't really address like the problem that Holy Paladins are going to have there, where they have nothing to hit, and they're just gonna struggle so hard on that fight, and I feel so bad. And then last boss of Plaguefall is a similar thing where the boss goes down, And so it spawns little ads. And I think the reason they have that again is for the Disc Priests and the Holy Paladins. But the thing is, Disc Priests can keep hitting those, whereas Holy Paladins are having to run around in the circle, going ring around the rosy to dodge everything, and then they can't hit anything. And yeah, so I just thought about that because of the bursting thing. But yeah, Disc Priests again, they addressed it again by making them able to spell, but then Holy Paladins don't have anything to hit while they're trying to heal through bursting once everything dies. And so I think they're at the biggest disadvantage. I don't think that like anything like a monk or a shaman. I think shamans they have insanely high throughput right now, especially like group wide. And then Resto Druids always been pretty decent at healing bursting if they know how to ramp and time their hot and their wild growth. I don't think they're gonna have a problem. I think it's just Holy Paladins are gonna have the biggest problem with healing bursting.
Interesting.
If it keeps scaling. Right now the scaling is stopping at 15. If it keeps stopping at 15, I don't think it'll ever actually be a problem. I'm just scared if they decide to keep making it scale past 15, how crazy it would get. So
yeah. I'm scared of that scaling too on Grievous and bursting.
Yeah. But for the most part, I think the bursting change is pretty good.
Awesome. Let's do, I guess, unless we could talk about maybe some of the other new affixes, perhaps like Spiteful, Storming, Inspiring, any of those ones that you've had, say a healer perform differently than the other healers on, or any thoughts just for general healers on them?
Yeah, this whole, all the Shadowlands dungeons right now are really, really melee punishing, so I feel like Holy Paladins again and Mistweavers are getting really punished because they can't be in melee. It is possible, I think, for Mistweavers to not lose out on that much throughput by not being in melee, but I do feel it like when I was doing Holy Paladin keys last night, and we were like in Grievous, and I'm trying to get us out of Grievous, and then suddenly I have to get out of melee, so I can't be generating like holy power, because right now like their holy power like gen is kind of like on the low side right now until we get more stats, and it gets way worse when you bring into account the Spiteful and you have to like be running out of melee all the time. And same thing, Storming is going to create that same kind of effect. You can't always be in melee, and there's just so much incidental melee damage. I think a lot of you actually can just wear Vitality Sacrifice as a Holy Paladin right now on Shadowlands, which is like the tank legendary, where you just like do damage. Yeah, and you can do a lot of damage because you're just standing in melee. There's just so much unavoidable incidental melee damage going on right now.
Funny. Wow.
Yeah, it actually works really well.
What does that legendary do?
The moment you enter combat with a mob, if it's an elite mob, so pretty much everything in dungeons, you get like a 17k shield, and the first 17k damage they do to you is reflected back at them. So you just get a shield per mob.
Okay.
Yeah, Pro Warriors were using it for a little bit, but they got nerfed, didn't it? At some point.
No, they changed the tooltip. It actually still is just the same.
But okay.
It's really good on Vengeance. I think it's good on Warrior, like you said. And it's like just a good legendary in general for tanks if they don't have a specific one they want. And apparently healing.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, I think it's mostly the Holy Paladins don't have a lot of good other legendaries right now. Like their best like healing legendary is doing like less than 5% of their overall healing, which is really low compared to all of the other healers' legendaries. Like if you look at like the Mistweaver one before it got, well, even after it got nerfed, it's still like contributing like upwards of 15% of your healing, like in a key. So yeah. But and then as far as Inspiring, I haven't actually had a lot of experience playing with Inspiring, and I don't think I experienced like a lot of problems with it either. So I don't think anything.
I think it'd just be. It would favor the healers that have CCs that could CC most mobs, right? Like Monk would have a better time with Inspiring because they could use paralysis on just about any mob in the game.
That's true.
That's inspired. Ring of Peace helps with that.
Just
like Infested.
But yeah, I mean, you can have your non-healer do it, but it's better if the healer can. Like everything.
Yeah, I guess we always had like a mage in the group or something, so
right,
mage feels really required this time. So I think there's always gonna be a mage because you want your AI and you want your lust. So
repentance. Get repentance from mob.
Repentance would probably work on most. I feel like there's mostly like humanoids and stuff like that in all of these dungeons. There's some
undead, right? But undead can get repented too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could be the meta.
All right, this is gonna sound stupid. Did we talk about Prideful pre-show, or did we talk about Prideful after the show started?
I don't think we've talked about it much.
Okay.
We haven't talked too much about it.
I think that's next on the list of stuff to talk about from a healing perspective then, Corey.
Okay, so going back to Grievous and Bursting, I think those two affixes in conjunction with Prideful are really awful because you end up going into Prideful like sub 50% health, especially if you're already like deep in Grievous stacks when that's when that stuff is spawning, it's really hard to recover from. And as far as like bursting goes, if you're not pulling like the exact percent to spawn the prideful, you're still gonna have bursting stacks going out while the prideful's going out. So that's really it makes us like whereas those affixes used to be like push affixes before, I'm really scared for them to be push affixes now, just because of how they're scaling and with the addition of prideful.
You guys
And then-
remember when Trell said that you're going to pull a bunch of trash mobs with Prideful at some point during the expansion? I am not a believer anymore, man.
Oh, really? Oh, we'll see.
I believe
Hard to be
it.
informal.
I mean, maybe it's because we're wearing LFR gear right now, but
We're in
damn it,
LFR gear, man.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah, we'll talk later.
All right, I'll see you again. I'll keep waiting.
I think maybe if you pull trash on as well, maybe my DPS won't like be so greedy with their CDs and they'll pop them, and I kind of prefer that, honestly.
What are you talking about?
They might be like, oh, there's more than one target, I'll actually press my CDs, because right now the problem is that they see the prideful, they're like, I can either pop my vendetta right now, or I can wait until like that 30% damage up and then pop it, and every time they wait until they get the 30% damage up and then they pop it. So I'd almost rather pull the mobs just so that they actually pop their CDs. But yeah, that's the other problem, is kind of figuring out your CDs. Like a common thing, like it's one thing just be like, oh, just pop your CDs. But when like I think like a common place where we're running into this problem this week is Echelon. So Tyrannical Grievous Echelon is pretty scary, and you all want to save your CDs for him. So the thing is, I'm holding on to all of my healing CDs because there's like at least 2 phases, maybe 3 phases. I'm gonna have to like do like heavy burst healing to keep us alive. And then all the DPS are holding on to their CDs because they want to be able to burn the boss as quickly as possible. And most of the time, you just end up dying there because everyone's holding on to their CDs. You don't really talk about like what you want to commit. So I think it's just going to take a lot of communication from your group, deciding what CDs are worth popping, what healing CDs I need to use, if any. Is it more worth to use your DPS CDs instead of my healing CDs? And find that balance is going to be really hard.
I think it's weird that you're even stating that there are bosses where you need all offensive cooldowns, Bloodlust, and a Prideful buff on, to where you're like,
It's Tyrannical Grievous. I mean,
It's Tyrannical Grievous.
then you also want all of your healing cooldowns on top of it as well. That by itself is, sure, it's Tyrannical Grievous, like that can be what you're saying, but even then I feel like Echelon is still kind of a coin flip. Even on non like Grievous weeks, on Tyrannical, that fight is very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends a little bit like on like the healer CDs. So like when I was playing like Holy Pound last night, I was thinking, okay, if we're gonna get 3, then I could Divine Toll the first, Wings the second, and then Divine Toll the third. But if we're only gonna get 2, then I can just Wings and Divine Toll, and then I can use Divine Toll right now on like the Prideful and stuff like that. So of course, like knowing those kinds of things is gonna come with time. Like knowing like how many phases. It's like Kragman, like how many phases am I gonna get? What do I need to save? And that knowledge will come later. But yeah, the fact that you have to think like that for the prideful into the boss is actually, it's so hard to keep everyone alive during that. If you don't have like, especially if you don't have a lot of curses spells and you're thinking, I'm going to be like out of commission because we only have 1 mage and they need to spell whoever gets that. So when everyone's taking that curse damage and stuff like that, I can't be healing and everybody needs to be topped going into that, or we're going to come out with like 5 group. So you can't get 5 groups of stacks, but 4 groups stacks on everyone.
We're gonna all go alliance and use every man for himself whenever you
that would actually be really good, yeah. But yeah, so those are the kind of problems I think Priv's gonna have. Although I really do like the affix. I like the Kiss Curse kind of affix way more than the first 3 seasons of BFA. I'm
surprised it gives you mana return, I'm not gonna lie.
The mana return owns, man. I'm gonna save so much money on Fish Feast. I'm so excited. Yeah,
nobody has to like stop a beast. You can just pull the boss at like 20% health, and you're like, okay, we're gonna be fine. Our healer has infinite mana.
Yeah, I think that's definitely gonna help a little bit with those healers who are usually wasting time, misweavers, sitting on the ground drinking all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I think I have to say about Prideful. I really like it, but it'll just be interesting to see how we plan out CDs to work with it.
All right, last part of our healer section here. Let's talk about raid testing. So you've done most of the bosses in raid testing, right? How's that been so far? You know, what specs and which fights have been good, bad, fun, interesting?
I think all the fights save DDR look really good. I think that this priest is going to do well. So it's really hard to look at testing and be like, and like look at logs right now and be like, oh, this class is going to do well, this class is going to go, because like right now you're seeing Mistweavers on the top, and you're seeing like Disc Priests kind of like in the middle, and you're seeing Holy Paladins usually at the bottom. And then you're seeing like Resto Shaman on the top a little bit, and then Resto Druids kind of near Mistweavers, but there's also like a lot of variance, I think. And I think the reason for that is that it's really hard to look at raid testing and judge how good a healer is going to be, because you need to know the timings if you're playing a Disc Priest, even a Holy Paladin, but especially a Disc Priest to do well, and kind of a Resto Shaman now, because you just need to know when to put down your Cloudburst. It's not nearly as in-depth as knowing when to like Evangelism and Rapture and stuff like that as a Disc Priest, whereas you see Mistweaver doing so well right now because they're just like a reactive healer. They're like, oh, you took damage, I'll just press Essence Font now. Okay, I'm on top of the meteors, I'll press some RJW and stuff like that. It's really hard to judge, but I think all the fights are really fun. Most of the fights I think had pretty intense healing. I think the only ones that felt like really boring to me were like Artificer felt really boring to heal, and the DDR boss felt boring to heal, though I didn't test it in the most recent iteration, which apparently had some more healing. Something like Stone Legion Generals was actually pretty fun to heal as well. But I don't know. I'm really interested to see. I think all the healers are much closer than people are. Like not only in Raid, but also Mythic Plus. I think they're much closer than people are giving them credit for being, and how like close their actual throughput is. But I'm really interested to see, which is gonna be good, because every day I look at logs or I listen to someone, and every day I change my mind on what is going to be the best healer this raid. I do think it will. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, are you a big Shriekwing fan? Love healing through line of sight?
No, no, man. I was having like the nice thing about Drestigath was that at least when people were out of your line of sight, they had like a debuff, so I could know like why I couldn't heal that stupid warrior that was staying in the cloud. But this time, when like I go to reach someone and I can't, or they like go out of line of sight like halfway through my cast, or like things like that and stuff like that. So the other thing about that room was that I was having so many pathing issues. I used to have this on Orgazo where I'd go to put link down and be like no path available, and people just start dying.
Do you really have pathing problems in that fight? Oh shit!
We're complaining too that they're blinking and going nowhere because they're having pathing issues. But like you always line around the pillar, and so I'd like go to put like link down, and it like I'd just be spamming it, and I just keep getting like the error sound and getting upset. So hopefully they fix that part too.
That's so frustrating.
Is Blizzard ever going to learn that healers... Okay, the one thing that you don't add to a fight for healers is smoke bomb mechanics, or anything that makes like your whole entire raid have to line of sight the healer.
Yep. I really dislike line of sight. That's the kind of fight where I'm like, man, I hope for some weird reason I get to play my Resto Druid on this fight, because I can just string through line of sight and I can just hop people and it won't really care. Whereas like casting things like Chain Heal or like long cast, or like things that need to like jump to multiple targets and stuff like that is much harder to deal with. So yeah, but I don't like the line of sight. I almost actually forgot about that until you said it. But yeah, I think the fight is really cool. I really wish they'd made it like a mid-tier fight so that they could actually make it hard instead of having to nerf it into Oblivion, because it's the first boss. I wish they would have saved that for the middle and put some boring boss at the beginning.
It's kind of strange that it's like a first tier boss, but it has an insta wipe mechanic, because I don't think when was the last time we've actually even seen that?
I don't think we have.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what version is going to make it to live, but I doubt it's going to be anywhere near as punishing as the versions we tested.
No,
I actually agree. I don't think that there's any way that they keep the instant raid wipe aspect of it on a first boss. Like that's just like unprecedentedly hard, right? Like more often than not, that's like a maiden. So it's like slightly later into the fight.
Yeah, like
maiden
third
style.
from last
Xanash.
boss. Yeah,
Xanash was the same way. Rodan
from
was also the same way.
Tomb of Sargeras was kind of like that, right? I don't think it's bad. But...
Which one?
First boss of Tomb.
Oh, yeah. It was actually, because you had the soaks and the balls, and if you messed up the ball, then you would just raid wipe. That's actually, you're right.
The ball, I think, was a lot hard, like a lot easier to do consistently though than the Shriekwing phase is going to be. Like Shriekwing phase is pretty tough. The odds that all 20 people in your raid get that right for 4 phases or whatever, I don't know. I think they're going to tune it so that it's healable and livable. But anyways, it's a cool fight. There's actually 2 fights in that room as well, because you come back to that room later and you fight the big guy in there, Sludge Fist, right?
They just reverse the vote.
Yeah, they could just reverse the order. Although Sludge Fist does destroy the pillars, so maybe that wouldn't work lore wise.
Shriekwing resummons them.
Yeah.
He pulls them out of the ground.
Mm-hmm. All right, that will do it for our main topic. We do have some questions to answer, some Q&A to get to, but before we get there, let's thank our supporters over at patreon.com for making our show possible. They are Paul of US Proudmore. Congrats, Riley, on cutting edge and N'Zoth mount. Riley. WoW community reads any tuning post. WoW community. Look how they massacred my boy. Gopher is AFK contemplating his future. Thanks to Sean Gill, I'm considering rerolling Bear for Shadowlands. King of Skills, Zuko, Ja, Drunk Swede from Legion of Lemmings, Argent Donnie U. I Wish I Was Dratnus' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, The Marsh Hare, Regulus, Never Nude, Chewy, tempting Illidan to assault Ner'zhul for overrising Gul'dan's empowerment, or Titanforge. Lufer of US... yeah, it's getting intricate. Lufer of US Wormrest Accord. BFA is so dead that I might actually graduate now. Nice. Been there. Second attempt, Alliance NA. Now 12 out of 12 Mythic. Grats. Sen of US Kill Jaden. Daz Boot, better Mage Lead than Tal. Brought to you by Dratnos the Excel Wizard. Brad Ceratops. Gino, the 24th best DH on Thrall. Necris. Will Blizzard care about class balance, class identity, balance, and agency? Shadow Priest can pump if you chain pull, just give him a chance. Also, massive spell for bursting. Big Shadow Priest. Stonks.
True.
Nevuk, Sinmara, Eevee, Frosty K new meta. Stevenson thinks Tettles is fun. Is fun like Dratnos, but not as creepy. And informative like Trell, but not as good at the game.
What the hell?
Man, that's so many flames on two of us. Wait, all three of us? No, Trell didn't get flamed, right?
I thought he's playing me for a second, but now I'm not sure.
Trell is not as fun, apparently.
Well, okay, I guess he wasn't compared to there, but I don't know. Still, good flame. Good all-around flame.
Fucking murder.
Take Light of the Protector and Rage Regen off the GCD. Woe Bonesy no verse. No trick. Vamp of Storm Rage. I unscheduled a Tettles Flame. Vesuvius and Glade need to choose a main. Sean Gill. Killer of Lunar Beam. BFF of he and Hesychostus. First of his name. Diemat. Syncope. Gamer Dad in Training. You got an A. We got A. Druid DPS Tooltips Unite. Okay. Yeah, you guys, this is the where there was just the one change for Druid and it was just adding the letter A. We didn't talk about that. It's a good meme though. If you guys are seeing A's in like street in balanced Druids, posts or titles or whatever, that's what they're memeing about. Heltari, Ishio, Dream Team can time any key as long as it's Junkyard. Hanny is going to pump in Shadowlands. Nyx, Xylic, my brother needs to play more and stop being a noob. Flick LF rating guild for Shadowlands. Good luck in your search. Thanks everybody for the support. Questions and answers time. There's one question that we actually we basically answered during the show, so we'll not do it now. From Silent Third G about healer gameplay. So let's instead do question from @oldman Tony McD. If I kill, say, the first 3 bosses on Mythic, will the end of the week vault only offer loot from those 3 bosses, or will it pull from the whole raid loot table, the last 2 bosses on Mythic included, which is an important question because the last 2 bosses have the higher item level stuff as well. I think the answer is we don't know for sure, but it looks like it's only going to be the bosses that you've killed. Tettles, do you think it's only the bosses you've ever killed, or only the bosses you killed that week?
I think it's like through the boss, like through the final boss that you killed that week. I think then you're able to get loot from previous bosses.
So if I kill boss 7, I can get loot from bosses 1 through 7, regardless of which of those I've killed?
Probably.
Interesting.
But I guess I don't know for sure. Nobody knows for sure.
No idea.
We did normal raid testing, and I got this information from Squishy. When was normal raid testing? So many weeks ago. But like beyond that, I guess nobody truly knows for sure. So
definitely, I hope that they do not come up with a system where I'm incentivized to like build a roster based on who needs Great Vault from which bosses.
Oh no.
Notoriously, the Great Vault is still bugged, right? I got 2 of the exact same item like last week.
Oh, my vault last week?
It's not supposed to do that, yeah?
Yeah.
The vault's been wild. Mine was I got a 210 BFA item from doing 1 dungeon. I got a 207 Shadowlands item from doing 4 dungeons. And that didn't really add up. Also, one of my friends like looted an offhand, looked in his bags, it just disappeared a minute later, and then he looted another vault item after.
Not bad.
That was pretty awesome.
Rent an item. Pretty good system. All right, next question comes from Squishy. Less loot and no bonus rolls was the price paid for the removal of Warforging and Titanforging. Was it worth it? Corey,
Yes.
do you have a okay? Yes.
Yeah. I think it's definitely worth it. I definitely I hate that I would get an upgrade and it'd be like, man, it's so great I finally get this trinket, but now I need a Titanforge that's 10 levels higher, and then I needed to roll each, and I needed to have a socket, and then just like always feel like you're fiending for that piece. So I'm totally fine with the removal of Warforging and Titanforging, and just being able to only add sockets to half of my pieces so that I can just complete my set and then feel like I don't have to worry about it anymore.
All right, final question comes from Cathay in Discord. What old raid would you like to see as a reworked dungeon in Shadowlands? Something like the Karazhan we got in the middle of Legion. This is a good question. Tettles, do you have any old raid preferences? How long have you played this game for? Not too long, right? WoD?
WoD. Do I have anything that I want to see reworked similar to Karazhan? I don't think specifically like Karazhan. I actually do like the Mega Dungeon theme though. The Mechagon and the Karazhan, how it was like that, like what was it, like 10 boss instance, and then you got, or 8 boss instance, and then you got it turned into 2 separate wings of dungeons. I thought that was actually pretty nice. I did find that kind of interesting. I don't know if necessarily that I want to see another raid reworked into something like that. Maybe somebody has like a better opinion of like a raid that would probably fit the mold like that, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. Like ICC could potentially be that because we're going into Shadowlands, but even still.
I think Firelands would be a really good one because there's so much trash and it's so open at the beginning.
It's an open dungeon. Yeah,
it's an open dungeon. Maybe not the second half. That's not as open.
The second half would basically be a workshop,
half.
right? You just you kill the boss, you cross the bridge, you kill the boss, you cross the bridge, you kill the boss. Yeah.
So only lower Firelands. I think I'd be cool with that.
That would be actually a cool zone to go back to. Yeah.
Looking for group Kyrian Brewmaster lower Firelands plus 10.
Yeah.
Hold on, wait. Does that give the buff? How are they going to manage this? Whenever they add new dungeons, are they going to just how are they going to give us our Covenant specific dungeon buffs in these new dungeons? Wait a second.
Oh yeah, that's well, each Covenant could just bring a different buff for the same dungeon. So they add whatever new dungeon they add, each Covenant has a buff in instead of just one Covenant having a buff in there.
Stop talking.
That you have one of each, so I don't think it would matter at this point. So. Like, we put you in the group, you're already going to make sure you have one of each, because otherwise it's going to turn into like a plague fall or something, and you're just going to not be able to go because you didn't bring someone who's whatever that is.
So you actually think that that's going to identify as a major problem, like once people start getting more optimized in their runs, Corey?
Yeah, I think that the meta is going to revolve around having one person, at least one person from each Covenant in your group. Otherwise, you're going to have to be in like, oh, plague fall, let me go find a different rogue or something like that. Every single time, and if you want to make like a push group, you're going to want to make sure you have one of each.
Some dungeons are definitely more impactful than others. Like Sanguine Depths, I really don't notice a difference if we have Venthyr or not. But like Halls of Atonement, if we don't have a Venthyr to control those gargoyles, it's like way, way worse.
You know, it's interesting. I find it kind of hard to find Night Fae now.
Mm-hmm.
Now that DK kind of got blasted into oblivion, so basically the only thing I feel like is playing Night Fae is Resto Druid. I guess Beast Mastery Hunter, but people are playing MM, right?
They're going back Kyrian now, right? After the rework.
There's some bug thing for MM right now, right? I've seen some logs that have been.
Oh yeah, the Night Fae ability.
They
was
fixed,
bugged for.
They fixed that
one.
But I think BM still may be Night Fae, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Corey knows more than I do.
I don't actually know. I haven't seen BM. I've only seen Marksman.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I don't actually know.
So yeah, but I think it's actually going to be pretty hard to fill Night Fae, which Mist of Tyrannus Scythe, Night Fae is like kind of mandatory.
Yeah, do you think there's a chance for push groups that you'd have like just somebody with a Night Fae alt that's like slightly worse and plays that only in Mist or whatever?
I could definitely see a healer slot doing that. Like if your healer's not a Resto Druid, I could definitely see them having a Resto Druid alt, just being able to log onto that, because like you don't need to be super optimized as a Resto Druid to do well, but that would kind of suck for you as like your main, like you're pushing on like a Disc Priest or something else, and then like you're never gonna get scored from that dungeon because every single time you get to that dungeon, they're like, oh, time to hop on your Night Fae. Although, I mean, the Night Fae isn't impactful as long as you just don't die. Just don't die. It's forehead, and then it's
well.
easy,
They also
right?
had the buff. They had the 10% stat buff
Oh,
too,
that's
from the mushrooms.
true. I forgot about that.
Which is actually kind of important for the first boss. Yo, do you know that they reworked the first boss in Mists of Tyr and Scythe? I'm so happy. They removed the lightning shield. Holy shit. It was such a good change, man. They just make them have an 80% DR now. Oh.
Yeah, the main boss gets an 80% DR if you spend too long in that phase. But it does do like a pulsing AoE, I think, right? Instead of the damage reflect.
Does it do a pulsing AoE? I mean, anything's better than that lightning shield that insta-kills you through dots and stuff, and you're like, oh, great.
Yeah, definitely improvement, either way. Still a hard boss. I think if you just got to be careful on how you burst down the tree or what DPS cooldowns you allocate for.
So do you think that healer is going to be the role that has to swap like covenants based on group needs then, Corey?
I think it's that or mage right now, because the mage can play 3 covenants right now and be totally fine. And I think it's just gonna be like the meta is gonna mold, and then whatever is left that like isn't filled is gonna be what the mage ends up going.
Because Restorative can play 3 as well, right? They can play Necrolord. I mean, they can't really play Kyrian, right?
I haven't actually tried playing Kyrian since they made the change or they took it off the global. I don't know if it would actually be awful, but
Fair.
I mean, like the Necrolord one is okay. It'd be really good for keeping like your tank alive, getting that like that healing amp on your tank. But yeah, I mean, like they could play all 3. I don't know. I actually don't even know what the Necrolord and Venthyr. I know I do know what the Venthyr was. The Necrolord and Night Fae one is for Disc Priest, but I don't think it's very good because I've never heard it mentioned before. I think Resto Shaman can get away with everything except for Night Fae. Resto Druid probably everything. But yeah, they'll probably just end up being the flex. But also with how much pressure there is on like healing so far, like if it doesn't get better once we get in better gear, you actually might not want them to be unoptimized for healing with how like, because those Pridefuls are actually going to become pretty intense CPS checks with the bosses right after.
Because historically we've just sacrificed healing throughput because healing throughput hasn't really been relevant. So you would just, or like rather the base kit of healers is always strong enough to be able to overcome, in like you would wear damage corruption, for example, like Twilight or whatever. But yeah, maybe it won't end up being like that. Like
on a Resto Druid, I don't think it'd be a big deal. I think it'd be a bigger deal like a Disc Priest or a Holy Paladin for them, because they'd actually be giving up quite a bit of throughput, whereas like Resto Druid, it's not that huge. So I think it's definitely going to be healer dependent, and if they can do that. But again, I also think that it's just going to be the mages are going to end up changing to fit the mold and fill in whatever gap that is.
All right, that'll do it here for our show this week. Thanks so much for joining us, Corey. Where can people find you? What kind of content you make and stuff?
So mostly I'm doing just beta Mythic Plus because I really like Grievous Tyrannical, and I usually stream at twitch.tv/Korimae, which is spelled the same way that it is underneath my name right now on the stream.
Awesome. That'll be the end of our show. We'll be back next week for another one. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Later.
Bye.